Why social media owns your mind. Zizek explains, let us begin with a strange confession. I am not entirely sure that you are you anymore. And I don't mean this in some mystical, New Age way. I mean it in the most brutally materialist, digital, and frankly terrifying sense. Because the more I think about it, the more I realize that you, your desires, your fears, your sense of self are no longer born from within. They are curated, refined, and constantly reprogrammed by the very platforms you scroll mindlessly every day. But if I told you that your thoughts, your pleasures, even your pain, are now outsourced not to other people, but to algorithms, would you believe me? Or have you already been trained to laugh it off? This is what I want to explore with you. You and I are going on a journey today, or a philosophical journey, but not the kind you take in a dusty library or a quiet retreat in the mountains. No, this journey begins in your pocket, in that glowing rectangle you're likely holding right now, because this is the new battlefield of the mind. Social media has become the most powerful force of ideology in human history, more powerful than religion, more pervasive than capitalism itself. And the terrifying part, it's invisible. You don't see the strings being pulled. You think you're in control, but are you? Let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. When was the last time you had a thought that wasn't influenced by what you consumed online? When was the last time a desire arose in you that didn't first pass through the filter of a trend, a viral post, a meme, or a video? Can you even distinguish between your authentic self and your algorithmically generated identity anymore? Slavoj Zizek, the philosopher whose voice often sounds like a blender full of gravel and nicotine, once said that ideology is not imposed on us from above. It is lived, it is performed, it is enjoyed. And that is precisely what makes it so dangerous. Under capitalism, ideology becomes pleasure. And now, that pleasure lives in your feeds. You like it, you scroll it, you perform it, you think it's you, but it's not. It's a simulation of you, a digital echo carefully sculpted by machine learning systems designed not to liberate you, but to hold your attention hostage.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
What social media does is far deeper than distraction. Distraction implies that there's still a real you trying to focus on something else. But what if there isn't? What if the platform is the focus? What if, over time, your brain has been rewired to crave nothing but the next hit of validation, the next microdose of outrage, the next identity to perform? This is not science fiction. This is neuroplasticity. Your mind is adapting to the digital environment. You're not just using social media, you're becoming it. And here's the paradox. Social media gives you the illusion of choice. You choose what to follow, what to post, what to like. But the truth is, these platforms have already chosen for you. Not in the hard, fascist way, not with censorship and force, but in the soft, seductive language of personalization. The algorithm says, we know you better than you know yourself. And terrifyingly, it's right. It predicts your desires before you even know them. It nudges you toward the version of yourself that is most engageable, not most authentic, not most free, but most clickable. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Social media is bad. But that's not the point. The point is much darker. The point is that social media is you. Or at least, the version of you that now dominates your waking hours, and perhaps even your dreams. The philosopher Baudrillard warned us about this, the hyperreal, the world where the copy becomes more real than the original. Your Instagram self is not a reflection of you. You are becoming a reflection of your Instagram self. The simulation has overtaken the source. And worse, you prefer it that way, because it's easier, it's cleaner, it comes with filters. So here's a question I want you to sit with. If your digital self were deleted tomorrow, every post, every photo, every comment, and every follower, would you still exist in any meaningful way? I'm not asking whether you'd be alive. I'm asking whether your sense of identity could survive that disappearance. Or have you become so entangled with your online persona that its death would feel like your own? And now, let's get personal. I'm not above any of this. I'm speaking to you not as a philosopher from some ivory tower, but as someone who has also been caught in the web. I too have felt the dopamine rush of a viral post. I've sat there, reloading the likes, feeling the strange, hollow pleasure of being seen not for who I am, but for how I perform. And it is addictive, more addictive than any drug, because it doesn't just alter your mood. It alters your ontology, your very sense of being. And here's the kicker: you can't escape this system by logging off. Because the logic of social media has already infiltrated everything. The way you speak, the way you present yourself in public, the way you think about love, success, even morality. Everything becomes content, even pain, even grief. We curate our tragedies now. We filter our breakdowns. We brand our traumas, because somewhere, deep in the back of our minds, we suspect that nothing is real unless it is public. So what do? Is there a way out? Or are we doomed to perform ourselves forever in high definition for an audience we'll never meet? The mirror that lies: how social media replaces reflection with simulation in the ancient world. The mirror was a sacred object. It was used not just to see one's face, but to encounter oneself, to confront the mystery of the self, the strange awareness that says I am. Reflection, in the philosophical sense, was a process of interiority, of diving deeply into the recesses of one's mind to wrestle with truth, contradiction, and meaning. But in our age, the mirror has been replaced by a screen. And the screen does not reflect, it simulates. It does not reveal, it performs. We no longer look into ourselves. We look outward into a hyper-curated world of avatars, filters, and metrics. And what we find there is not truth, but a carefully engineered illusion, a carnival of selves, all vying for attention, none of them real. What social media presents is not your reflection, but your simulation. It is a digital echo of your desires, projected back at you in a language you never consciously agreed to speak. Have you noticed how, over time, your posts begin to resemble not what you feel, but what you believe others expect you to feel? We share not to express, but to signal. Our joy must be aesthetic. Our sadness must be poetic. Our opinions must be perfectly aligned with our chosen tribe, not too nuanced, not too contradictory, not too original. Because to be original is to risk disapproval. And in the digital marketplace of identity, disapproval is death. Zizek would say that we are trapped in a loop of symbolic exchange. We post not to communicate, but to be recognized. We want the other, the faceless digital audience, to validate our existence. But here's the problem: the other is not real. It is a statistical abstraction, a phantom made of data points. and yet we crave its approval more than anything. In this sense, social media doesn't just simulate the self, it replaces it. It becomes the interface through which we relate to ourselves and to the world. And like all interfaces, it hides more than it reveals. Think about this. When you look at your profile, whose eyes are you seeing through? Are you seeing yourself through your own mind, or through the imagined gaze of others? The ancient existentialists Kierkegaard, Heidegger, Sartre all warned us about this. They said that to live authentically, we must resist the temptation to live through the eyes of others. But now we have built a world where that is nearly impossible. Every moment is a performance. Every thought is a potential caption. But even solitude has become a kind of content, a brand of mystique. We sell not only our images, but our experiences, our identities, our very souls. And what do we get in return? Metrics, numbers, the currency of validation, likes, shares, comments, views. These are not just feedback loops, they are psychological chains, but they train us to behave in ways that increase visibility, not truth. And over time, we internalize them. We begin to think in metrics. We ask, will this post get attention? Instead of, is this true to who I am? And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the simulation becomes indistinguishable from the self. We become puppets of our own projections. But here's the scariest part. The system doesn't even need to lie to you. It doesn't need to control you overtly. All it has to do is suggest, nudge, and recommend. The algorithm learns your rhythms, your impulses, your insecurities, and then it feeds them back to you in a curated stream of confirmation. You begin to see what you already believe. You begin to like what you already like. And eventually you forget that there was ever another possibility. The mirror becomes a loop, and the loop becomes a prison. Ask yourself, when was the last time social media changed your mind? Not reinforced it, not entertained it, but truly disrupted it. When was the last time you encountered something online that shattered your assumptions, that forced you to rethink your worldview, that made you uncomfortable in the best possible way? If you can't remember, that's not an accident. That's a design feature. The platforms are not built to challenge you. They are built to keep you. And the best way to keep you is to keep you comfortable, even if that comfort is laced with anxiety, comparison, and self-doubt. So we must ask, what does it mean to be human in a world where the mirror lies? Can we reclaim reflection in the age of simulation? Is there still a space for inner life, for silence, for thought that is not immediately commodified? And if so, where do we find it? The attention economy, how your focus became the most valuable commodity on earth. Imagine, for a moment, that your attention is not just a passive experience, not just something that drifts casually from one object to another. Imagine instead that your attention is capital, a finite resource, a currency. And like any currency, it can be stolen, traded, manipulated, and exploited. This is not metaphorical, this is literally how the digital world sees you. You are not the customer, you are the product. And your focus, your gaze, your scrolling thumb, these are the raw materials being mined in real time. Every second you spend looking at a screen, you are participating in the most aggressive economic system ever devised, the attention economy. Let's make this concrete. In the past, capitalism monetized labor. You worked, you produced, and you were paid for your time. But in the digital age, something strange happened. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube discovered a new kind of value your time when you're not working. Your boredom, your procrastination, your late night scrolling, and instead of paying you for it, they extract value from it. Every click, every pause, every like is harvested, analyzed, and sold to advertisers. You are the oil field, and your attention is the crude. But here's the philosophical twist. It's not just that your attention is being harvested, it's that your very sense of self is being shaped in the process. Because what you give your attention to, you become. This is not just spiritual wisdom, this is neuroscience. Your brain is plastic. Its pathways are molded by repetition. So when you spend hours immersed in outrage, distraction, comparison, and noise, your inner life starts to mirror the chaos of your feed. You become fragmented, reactive, addicted to novelty. And worst of all, you forget what it feels like to be still. Zizek might say that ideology today no longer functions through oppression, but through stimulation. You are not silenced, you are overwhelmed, but drowned in images, sounds, alerts, and feeds. And this overstimulation doesn't liberate you. It paralyzes you. Because when you are constantly reacting, you lose the ability to reflect. The attention economy doesn't just want your focus, it wants your inability to focus on anything else. It wants to trap you in a loop of endless engagement, where every moment is mediated, every thought is interrupted, and every silence is filled. Now ask yourself this: when was the last time you were truly, deeply focused on something for more than a few minutes? Not distracted, not multitasking, not checking your phone every few seconds, just present. If you're like most of us, that state is becoming increasingly rare. And that's not your fault. That's the design. The platforms are engineered to fracture your attention, because fractured attention is easier to manipulate. But a focused mind is powerful, but a distracted mind is profitable. Remember when people used to say, if it's free, you are the product? That's no longer accurate. You're not just the product. You're the factory. You're the worker, the resource, and the output, all in one. And the terrifying brilliance of this system is that it doesn't force you to comply. It seduces you. It promises you connection, entertainment, relevance. But what it delivers is fragmentation, anxiety, and a loss of sovereignty over your own mind. And so we must ask, in an economy where your attention is the most valuable thing you possess, what does it mean to give it away so easily? What does it mean to scroll past truths that could change your life simply because they don't come with the right thumbnail? What does it mean to live in a world where silence is rare, boredom is unbearable, and stillness is a threat? There is a deeper question here, maybe the deepest of all. Who are you when no one is watching, when nothing is trending, when the feed goes silent? Is there still a self beneath the algorithm, or have you been optimized out of your own consciousness? Are you still capable of long thought, of deep feeling, of sustained attention, or have you become a flickering reflection, a ghost in the feed? The great escape: is there any way to reclaim your mind from the machine? So here we are standing at the edge of a digital abyss, staring back at our own reflection and realizing it is not us. It is a version of us, flattened and monetized. A version that has been optimized for engagement, not for truth. And the question that now haunts us is simple, yet staggeringly complex. Is there a way out? Can we, you and I, reclaim our attention, our identity, our inner lives, from a system that profits from our disconnection. The first thing we must recognize is that there is no magical exit door. You cannot simply delete an app and expect to be free. Because the logic of social media, the algorithmic logic of visibility, performance, and validation has already colonized your mind. Even in the absence of the platform, the performance continues. You may find yourself narrating your life in captions, thinking in tweets, imagining how others would perceive your solitude as if through an invisible lens. That's the depth of the capture. The machine doesn't just live in your device. It lives in your habits, your language, your desires. But here's the painful truth. Liberation begins with suffering. Not the romantic kind, the real kind. The moment you begin to resist the scroll, you will feel it, the tremor, the anxiety, the silence that suddenly feels unbearable. That is the withdrawal. That is the evidence that something unnatural has taken root. And that suffering is your first signal that you are waking up. Zizek might say that true freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the act of choosing your constraints. So the first act of revolt is intentional limitation. You must create silence. Not just digital silence, but existential silence. You must sit with your own thoughts, uncurated and unedited. You must let boredom return. Boredom is not the enemy, it is the gateway to depth. It is the space where reflection is born. And in this silence, something strange happens. You begin to hear yourself again. You begin to remember thoughts that were not prepackaged, emotions that were not performative, desires that were not fed to you by an algorithm. This is not easy. The machine will call you back. It will whisper through notifications, through FOMO, through the creeping sense that you are missing something. But what you are missing is not out there. It is in you. And it has been waiting patiently for your return. Reclaiming your mind is not a one-time act. It is a daily rebellion. It is choosing to read something long and difficult, to sit with a book instead of a feed, to have a conversation that is not recorded, not shared, not optimized for virality. It is choosing to be present with someone truly present without needing to document the moment. It is choosing to be invisible sometimes, to be unseen, to exist outside the metrics. And here's the paradox. In doing so, you become more real, more rooted, more human, because you remember that your value does not come from visibility. It comes from being, from thinking thoughts that are not rewarded, from feeling emotions that are not validated, from doing things that no one else will ever see. So here, at the end of this journey, I ask you one final question, maybe the most important one of all. What kind of life do you want to live if no one is watching? What kind of self do you want to become if there are no likes, no comments, no audience? That is the true test of freedom. That is the doorway to reclaiming your mind. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us walk through that door, we can begin to build a new kind of world. One where reflection is more valuable than reaction, where depth is more powerful than display, where the human spirit is no longer something to be monetized but something to be honored, protected, and lived. Thank you for thinking with me. Now, turn off the screen. Go outside. Be still. Be invisible. Be real.